All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Miller. I'm the Volunteer and Community Engagement Manager for Justine. Justine helps transform individual lives and social systems to create a just and equitable community. We're delighted to welcome you to our second session of our 2021 Just Conversations series. We envision the series to engage the community, our community, in discussion around important, timely issues that are affecting our community. Our hope is to keep these in more of a conversational format and focused on creating solutions as opposed to stating the problems. Just some logistical items. We are streaming live on Facebook. If you're joining us from there, welcome. Feel free to drop some questions in the comments there. And if you're with us on Zoom, feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and I'll be monitoring both, and we'll leave about 25, 30 minutes at the end for any questions that come up that haven't been answered in the conversation. So our guest tonight is Jerome Dillard. He's worked with justice-involved individuals in reentry programming for over 20 years. He is currently the state director of EXPO, Ex-Incarcerated People Organizing, an organization that advocates for formerly and currently incarcerated people to be treated with dignity and respect. Jerome will be in conversation with our very own Justine peer support specialist, James Morgan, to discuss the barriers to voting for justice-involved Wisconsinites and the mission behind EXPO's Unlock the Vote initiative. So I will throw it to James to get the conversation started.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. And I just want to take a moment to speak about my knowledge and relationship with Mr. Dillard as our primary speaker for this evening. As a person who has been system impacted, I met Mr. Dillard many, many years ago. Observed him when he came into the correctional institutions, observed him here in the community when he was the coordinator for Voices Beyond Bars, excuse me, under what was just then the Madison Urban Ministries. Mr. Dillard has advocated for the rights of incarcerated and post-incarcerated individuals for many, many years. Individually on the front line, work with families. He has made a huge contribution. And I would just like for those of us who are in this space this evening to recognize that, to take some time out to listen to what information he has to share with us. And if it impacts you in some way, whether you're previously incarcerated or not, reach out to us for further information so that we can begin to, under his leadership and others' leaderships who are working with those officials who have the capacity to create change, so that we can begin to support and build our community. So I want to thank you again, Jerome, for being here.
Thank you, James, and thank you for your kind words, brother. You know, I love being in the pit with you, working and reaching out to our brothers and sisters who are impacted by this system. And I have to take my hat off to you, brother. You are, I don't know how you do it, but you're a busy man. We've had opportunity of doing some work together, and I really, really appreciate your friendship and being able to work with you in this community, bro.
Thank you.
Well, I'll introduce myself, give you a brief overview of Expo, Ex-Incarcerated People Organizing. My name is Jerome Dillard, and I am the state director of this organization. I've been doing this work for a while. I'd like to just talk about what we're doing in Expo, really. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and I look forward to just having some dialogue with my brother around criminal justice issues and solutions to some of the issues that we're dealing with now. Expo is led by directly impacted people. Expo is committed to dismantling all forms of disenfranchisement within our criminal justice justice system and support those who are returning to our community. We are committed to dismantling all systems that support mass incarceration and excessive supervision. We're truly dedicated to creating a just systems with policies and procedures that build strong, healthy families and safe communities. That's Expo in a nutshell. That is our mission statement. And we try hard to heed to that. We've been working very hard on many different issues. Later on, we're going to touch on Expo's Unlock the Vote campaign. I'm glad to talk about that with you and just spend some time together and hammer this thing out. Do we have questions or is there anything else that we have to launch this?
Yeah, I mean, you were just saying that, we could touch on the Unlock the Vote campaign here in just a bit. I think it would be prudent to just have a conversation, Jerome. I know, that, we are in a different time. Okay. Everything that we do is impacted by COVID and our inability to socialize in the ways that we did in the past, which makes the work more difficult. It makes it more difficult to get information out to people. And I think it's vital that we get information out to people in the spaces that we have to do that. And yes, I think we're going to talk about, voter disenfranchisement, some historical things. But given the climate that we're in here in Dane County, because, the federal government's going to do what the federal government's going to do. The state's going to do what the state's going to do. What are we looking at here in Dane County when it comes to criminal injustice issues? What are our citizens? What should our citizens, our fellow citizens, expect? And do you see any possibility that our local governments are going to move forward in some real ways when it comes to reforming the system?
Well, for forever, it seems, Wisconsin has been immune to any forms of transformation or reform of the criminal justice system. I don't like the term reform because they will tinker with the system, which has been going on forever in this country. But Wisconsin has not had any movement for as long as I've been doing this. And I don't say that in a bashful way, because today I am more optimistic than I've ever been. And I've been working in this area, in this city for about 17 years. And I'm seeing some things today that gives me hope. Today, and I know COVID plays a role in this, but our prison population today is at the same level that it was in 1999. I didn't think I would ever see that. We're 3,500 reductions since COVID has hit. And I think there's a couple of factors to that. One, I'm seeing a lot of old law individuals returning to our community after 25, 30, some 40 years are coming back to our community. And I want to raise that up because that's a long time. And it's going to take individuals who are like us, who have come home, who have found some degree of success, but have stayed out to welcome our brothers and sisters home and really walk through this reentry process. Technology is here. Cars have even changed. You don't even start cars the same way you did when many of them went in. Many of them went in at very young ages, and that's who I'm seeing returning old law prisoners. Many of them were juvenile when they went into the system. I mean, into the adult system. I know 3 or 4 personally who came home who went in at 15. They never paid rent. They never lived away from their mom's home. And so today I spent quite a bit of my time, just touching base with these individuals and making sure that they are all right. And I think that's the approach that we have used for years here in Madison. Voices Beyond Bars mastered that. And, have a great deal of success in this community with individuals who have gotten off paper, with individuals who have stabilized their lives and have been out for 10 years, 15 years. Um, and I feel that we owe it to our brothers and sisters behind the walls and fences to welcome them home, to walk alongside of them, and to assist in that reentry process and role model some things.
Yes. And I think along, with what you're saying, it's important for the community to know why that's important. When Jerome references old law individuals, he's speaking about individuals who were incarcerated pre-truth and sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a different standard, okay, given the fact and towards transparency, when I went to prison in 1983, sitting here now, I'm in that category that would be considered old law prisoners. And so, there's many reasons why we need to better inform the community, particularly around some of the language that we use when we're talking about corrections or, justice systems or injustice systems, because we need the community to be able to advocate for our issues. And in advocating for our issues, understand that they are also advocating for safe communities,
That's
for school funding. When we're talking about, when we get to the voting part, we'll get to that. But it's important for us to look at what is going on, and particularly here in Dane County, because we have so many issues to confront. Racism, inequity, inequality. These things just sort of compound the problems as we move forward in our daily lives. But we are here to, whether it's through Expo, Just Dane, some of the other organizations who are in the community battling these issues with our legislators and our leaders, it is incumbent upon us to have these conversations with you and to answer your questions as best we can, which we're looking forward to doing. And these things have, some significant impacts. Jerome mentioned, a person who may be an old law prisoner who went in at 17 and does not have the capacity to even prepare their own meals. To know how to advocate for the services that they need, medical treatment, mental health treatment, housing, employment. And, those of us in the community who say that we care about this community, we're not trying to cajole you into position you don't agree with, but we would love to sit down and have a discussion with you about it, because it's about all of us. And so we, again, Jerome, how has, I know that these things impact you on a personal level. When you're out in the community and you're working with other individuals and other organizations, what is the trajectory that you observe in those individuals willing to consolidate their energy and their power to focus on these issues on the multiple levels that we have to, whether that's legislative, whether that's in the court system, whether that's with law enforcement, our educators? Could you give us some insight into that, please?
Well, yeah, and it's been a haul. I've seen things. I was fortunate enough to be one who has been able to keep my hand on the pulse of the population by being able to go inside and do groups and restorative justice circles with individuals inside our state prisons and in the jail. I served as the Dane County reentry coordinator for our county with an office in the jail. And and also had opportunity of working at a facility up north, the Wisconsin Resource Center. I raised those up because it's it's been it's been a journey. I feel the hopelessness of many who are in the community right now. Homelessness is running rampant amongst this population. I was just on the phone earlier today with someone who's was released about 5 months ago, and he did get halfway house, but he was had to leave there in sub-zero weather. Uh, he's what they call SBN, Special Bulletin Notification. So that it's hard. It's hard for this brother who's doing all he can to do the right thing, and that's why I raise up the peer support and what you're doing, James. It's so vital, and not just you, but Eugene's doing it. To leave, there's so many in this community who have been directly impacted, who are walking alongside individuals like this. And keeping hope alive. The fact is, it's our mission to educate our community around these issues. It never amazes me what individuals don't know about mass incarceration and mass supervision. We are lagging way behind from many states who have had some reforms and who are reducing their prison population and who are investing in the communities that these individuals come for. So right now, the rally cry, the cry is that we form some sort of justice reinvestment fund within the state of Wisconsin. That we look at the front end and invest in treatment alternatives diversions, meaning that uh, there's more specialty courts. There's funding for community-based organizations that look like these individuals, who have the experience of these individuals, working with them, and really hammering out the housing issues that's a real need with this population. And so, right now, that's what the push is, meeting with landlords and uh, talking with them about giving second chances or third chances, about renting to individuals who may be at SBN, and understanding how they got to that status, which some underhanded things were done after the former governor lost the election. There were lame duck sessions, and also the attorney general put some things in place that really trapped a lot of people into a category that makes it almost impossible to sustain yourself out here in
Yeah.
this community.
Well, that really begs the question, and I would ask my fellow citizens to consider this: is that when you're observing these issues or you're delving into it to learn more about it, ask yourself the question: who really benefits? Because if it's your representative, your legislator, or other people who are not listening to you, not utilizing your tax dollars in a way, again, that lead to building healthy and safer communities, I would ask you to have a conversation with your soul about, where we go from here. Together or apart. Jerome, one of the things that you said also sparked a question in my head, is that we have to, again, and I'm going to be kind of on this soapbox during the period of time that we here, because I think those of us, whether it's Expo, myself as a peer specialist, others who have come back to the community and gone through these struggles and have acquired some sense of um, respect in some areas, and the ability to have our voices heard, is to also reach out to that population of people. And what would you suggest would be some of the good ideas, or some ideas, where in the process of reentry, that we can begin to build some educational systems around that and what that really looks like, You know, we have a program over at Just Dane that do the prisoner reentry simulations.
Mhm.
You know, and we encourage more people to look into that, to go to our website and to look at that and see if that would be an option for you. I know there's some work being done right now on how we would or would not be able to deliver that service at this point, but be
Mhm.
assured that we're working on it. So, you know, let's kind of shift here, man, because I think it's important to really focus on, you know, voter disenfranchisement. I've got to have some water here for a second. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Um, you know, why our fellow citizens. Well, let me share a quick story.
Okay.
I went to prison in 1983. My last period of incarceration was in December 15th, 2015. Ever since that point, and prior to that point, I have been disenfranchised from voting, being on parole status. However, like every other citizen, I get up and go to work every day. My income is taxed. I'm denied the right to vote. I'm someone who's fairly educated around systems and how systems work, how our schools are funded, how our law enforcement is funded, which also looks at how certain communities are targeted more so than others. So why is it that we have had a vacuum? It appears to have been a vacuum here in Dane County, where, you know, those who have the capacity to convene large numbers of people, to not take that opportunity to bring our collective community together to really focus on how we change systems here in Dane County.
Well, I'm going to reflect back to Just Dane when it was Madison area urban ministry, and how we came to even start doing reentry work here in Dane County. It was myself and Mary Kay and Jackie and Lauren Brown Perry, who went before. We had a meeting with the United Way at the United Way building, and all these service providers were in that room. Landlords from big community projects, employers, the sheriffs, the police. There were many of us in that room talking about, and this was in 2004, talking about reentry and reentry services for people coming out of prison. And we came together and we formed what we call the Journey Home, and there was so much support, so much many agencies who work with us. And I worked in the office with Mary Kay, and this went on for a few years. There were other changes, but I'm saying that what we brought together in that room and had real conversation. There were two speakers. There was the Secretary of the Department of Corrections and myself. And I believe, you know, we had started meeting Voices Beyond Bars and telling our stories. And I was able to share a piece of me, the raw, real me, about some of the traumas that I just buried, about childhood issues that caused me to have some sort of complex, and my mental health issues. And talking about that with them, they felt me, not just heard me, but they felt me. And they say, we're going to support you. And when we started the program, and I can pick up the phone for employers. I was able to help assist a lot of people in Dane County. It's not me, but it was how this structure was put together. I had employers in my Rolodex. I had treatment providers in the Rolodex, and people would come to our office and get the services that they need, or referred to someone soft handoff because we talked to them on the phone and let them know this person was coming over there, and it put them at the top of the list. I I just feel it's going to take all of us to come together when we can, similar to something we did at the Monona Terrace, where we had the DAs, the public defenders, judges, prosecutor, the DA himself, and prosecutor, and corrections, all in a room for a banquet at the Monona Terrace that gave me a vision that we have a brainstorming session with all entities, police, everyone, and have a real heart to heart, and really put the issues out there. I was in a couple of conversations with now our current Secretary of Department of Corrections, and it really makes me very optimistic when someone sits down and listen to you and hear your stories and try to understand what a group of people who have been pretty much ostracized, because there's one side of the aisle who's saying, criminals. They've used that for centuries, putting that label on individuals as criminals and giving them some justification or a feel good feeling about how they treat individuals with arrest and conviction records. I just feel that we've been working in silos all over the state. They keep nonprofits busy for a few dollars when the big contracts are not coming to the nonprofits who are really doing the work. And I believe that that's something that's going to change. I believe that we're in a place right now in this state where there's going to be some investment on the front and back end of for individuals who are justice involved. I
Yeah.
don't know if I answered your question, brother.
Well, no, I agree, because again, every single one of us, every human being on the face of the earth right now has had to learn a lesson by the onset of this pandemic, and that's patience. Okay, and I think those of us who are wise, well, patience and the ability to adapt, because we're still in the phase where we've got to learn how to adapt and maneuver a whole different cultural, a social construct coming out of this whenever that happens. And I agree. I think there is space right now for many of us, and I'll use this term that I coined, have the opportunity to prosper in the midst of this pandemic. But I also understand that it's going to take relationship building. We're not going to be able to build and consolidate those relationships until we begin to have open and honest communication with one another. It appears to be in a lot of spheres and a lot of areas where the conversations are going on, whether it's about white fragility, black disenfranchisement, that we're having a ball with the language and all trying to figure out, what's going to be equitable, who's going to be there to define what that looks like, and who's going to be there when the resources are distributed. You know me, Jerome, I believe, and if you engage me in a conversation long enough, you'll come to find out why I would say to everyone who is in listening range right now that those who wield the power wield the pen. And that's why it's so important for us to come out of those silos, okay, to engage one another, to understand that we are supposed to be adults, okay? We should have the capacity to agree to disagree, but still focus on the business that's necessary to be taken care of for the well-being of all of us. Okay. And I'm sitting here in my mind is saying, for those individuals who are in this space right now, who are familiar with, individuals who have been in jails or prisons, because there's a narrative that we all have, low self-esteem. We cannot be educated. We've been gone for so long, where a lot of us take time to study. a lot of us take time to become the human beings and the brothers and the sisters and the neighbors that you expect to have in a free society and a free culture. Okay. And, if we begin to look back and understand our history, I guess, I mean, in some ways, that's embedded in the Constitution. If you violate the law, you go to prison, you go to jail, you serve your sentence, you come out, and there's the possibility for a second chance. Where in our era, people are not even getting the first chance. They're not getting the first chance in the educational system. They're not getting a chance in the homes that are going unsupported, where parents are struggling, where those who have riches and wealth. There are not a lot of wealthy people in America because they don't know how to build it, but who determine the outcomes for us on a daily basis. And they are expert. And I'm going to be 100% transparent with everyone who is listening to me right now. They've become expert in how to tap into your emotion. Okay, expert at it. You get into your emotions, you're unbalanced. You rely on what we have all been taught about who the other is. It's embedded in our imagery. It's embedded in our ideas. It's embedded in our faith institutions, in the one place where we all should be free to come together. So we really have to look at how we are being manipulated. Okay, gender-wise, race-wise, and I don't even like using the term race because until we understand the concepts and the power of worldview, white supremacy, we're all going to be used as commodities for this capitalist system. That's a fact. Given that fact, and given the information that we possess and the information that we are still in the process of acquiring, it's going to be very important that we be strategic in having these conversations. Okay, I want people to go away thinking. If it sparks something that you feel, that's okay too, because it may be against something that you've learned that is your truth. But we haven't taken time to sit down with one another to unlearn some of these things that continue to damage us along the way. And I think that's where we're going to really begin to make progress. Okay, when the average citizen walking down the street sees me, the first thought that comes into their head is that, oh, he must be a criminal. He's driving a nice car. He's wearing a suit. He's doing something illegal, as opposed to a young man who has similar traumas as the young people that we see in our juvenile justice systems as a young man: mental, emotional, physical abuse, um, AODA issues, no sense of self, coming through an education system that wasn't designed to teach me to find out who I am in the first place. And so I think our challenge is to make ourselves better. We're here talking about criminal justice, reform of criminal justice. What we're really trying to get across here, and I hope we meet with some success in this, is that we're all human beings. We're
That's
all
right.
here to protect our most vulnerable, our children, our women, and yes, indeed, our men too. Our young boys are struggling heavily out there,
Mhm.
particularly the young Black boys. It would be politically correct for me to say people of color. I don't like the term. I don't like the term because I feel it's an exchange for the terminology that's been used for decades to define people who were not of European descent in America as minorities. And I've seen us refer to ourselves as minorities. We've already put ourselves in second class. So how can we be heard? We, I think, as a community, and I work at Just Dane, and I work at Just Dane for some very, very specific reasons. And it's because of the people who are there and their knowledge and their wisdom and their compassion for this community. And its ability to do what it can to reach out to organizations and say, let's collaborate, let's work together. Okay, let's be on the front lines. Okay, let's be there when that person gets out off the bus and doesn't have transportation, okay, that needs housing, and to be there to advocate for them when we're struggling with convincing employers that it's to their benefit to give someone a second chance, but also to continue to have conversations with them, particularly in this new environment, to understand that we understand capitalism and finance. In order for us to get through this, we have to look at the human costs that this is bringing upon us right now. Okay, and so that's my plea to the management companies.
Right.
That's my plea to the property owners. Give us a chance. We will work with you to help you work with individuals and families who are struggling. I know that you've been brainwashed. You think crime and criminal, and the first thing you see is a Black man that looks like me, but you don't see those children. You don't see those mothers. Your privilege allows you to not go down to the homeless shelter, to the Beacon, and to some of the other churches that are giving people food so that they can survive the next day, so that people don't have to sleep out in the cold, okay, and freeze. We're blessed here in Wisconsin. I've got family in Houston, and people are dying. They're freezing to death.
Yes, yep.
Okay. So let's not take what we have here for granted. And I think that's one of the issues that our legislators and others rely on. They've grown accustomed to be able to take us for granted. They've grown accustomed to be able to pit us against one another. Okay, race, gender, class.
Yeah.
Okay, and until we as the core body of this community have these core conversations, okay, these core conversations with strategic actions in place to do something about it, I can guarantee you they're going to continue to take us for granted. I don't want to see that for any of you.
James, I'm wondering if we could, as we talk about bringing everyone to the table to have the conversation, I think it's good to also recognize that there are some people that are coming to the table who really don't know these barriers that we're talking about. And specifically tonight, I think we're talking about felony disenfranchisement. So I'm wondering if we could maybe step back a bit and define that,
Okay.
kind of give it a historical context and also a state context. So what is happening in Wisconsin to keep people from being able to exercise their right to vote?
All right, that gets to Jerome.
Yeah, I agree, and it's about educating our community. What amazes me more than anything is I think I'd like to start. I have a short PowerPoint. I don't know if can you bring that up or okay, just for some context here.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Okay. And I'll just say next slide. I want to fly through this. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I did want to put something up for content. Now this is when we began to launch the Unlock the Vote campaign. It's kind of outdated there, but the numbers have not changed very much. In this community, we have close to 68,000 individuals who are currently on some form of supervision in our state. We have 23,000, well, the numbers are down now, 3,000. So they say it's 19,000 or something who are currently incarcerated. But of that close to 68,000, roughly 20,000 are on supervision for misdemeanor offenses. So that leaves roughly 40,000, 44,000 who are on felony probation, felony supervision, I'm sorry. Next slide. Okay, Wisconsin law just glance over that. Any person convicted of treason, felony, or bribery, unless a person's rights to vote is restored through a pardon or under what it's saying though is, as long as you're in the community and you're serving a sentence on any under the law, you are denied the right to vote until that sentence is complete. Next slide. Okay. Each state have their own laws pertaining to whether a person who is convicted of a felony can vote and when. And this is pretty graphic. And one thing I often raise up is there are many states around us where you automatically restored your voting rights once you're back in the community. Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York are some. And you look to the west there. So, and this has grown over the years. It has not always been that way. The state of Florida, Louisiana, Tennessee, and several others, Alabama, I believe, you permanently lost your voting rights with one felony conviction. And that tells me something itself, and I'll come back to that. But I say this to say it's up. Many states use different tactics to keep like the maps, gerrymandering, the maps and things like that are old Jim Crow tactics to keep individuals from voting. We go to the next slide. And I want to share, when we went to Florida, a group of Expo members went to Florida when they were campaigning for Amendment 4. And just the energy there, and all these organizations working together to get this done. We don't have amendments and propositions that we can actually, as citizens, cast a ballot, and if there's a certain percentage or the majority says that this is felons should be able to vote, just using that as a term, majority say that, then it's law. Amendment 4, they had a 70% of the Florida voters said that individuals should get their voting rights back. That's what made it become law there. I spoke on this, that many people, when we launched this campaign, and we had sessions all over the state. We launched it in Racine, Wisconsin, in June of 2019. We were in the state capitol in September of 2019. We had some legislative bill numbers added to the Unlock the Vote. It never made it out of committee, but it did. It is a glimpse of some of the things that we can do. We're going back at it. And you mentioned, James, the climate that we're in today. I don't know if well, to be honest with you, I don't think anything like this is going to go in this climate, but it continues to give us an opportunity of educating our community and bringing our community together around something that is only right. And that is, individuals are able to vote once they're in the community. They should never lose their voting rights, period. And I think it's a compromise just asking for or demanding for our voting rights once we're back in the community. But that's where we are. I think it'll be something easier to get done when that time comes. Next slide, please. I'm going to get done with this. And next slide. Timeline, Unlock the Vote. These are some of the things that we did. We had affiliate launches all over the state, a lot of press conference announcing Unlock the Vote all over the state. And we had a couple of senators and representatives, Senator Taylor and Representative Jody Emerson and David Crowley drafted a bill for us. And we were able to get bill numbers on it. Next slide, please. Okay, the Senate bill was 348. The Assembly bill was 477. We're looking to get new numbers and new legislation introduced, and hopefully we can get it out of committee and get it to the floor. But if not, we're going to keep on demanding. that individuals get their voting rights back in the community once they're back in the community. Next slide, please. Okay, yep. Local actions, yeah, this is, oh, I believe I sent the wrong one, but local actions, this is the older one. And you can see some of the things, 19, everything came to a halt in 2020. Okay. Okay, next slide. Okay. And I'm gonna leave the PowerPoint. I just wanted to put that up there for context, and we can take this down and go forth with the conversation and take questions.
Yeah. Well, quickly, a follow up to what you were saying. You know, we had a meeting the other day, and you talked about some legislation on the federal level that would allow individuals who have been previously incarcerated to vote in federal elections. Could you talk a little bit about what that would look like, or what your view of that is at this point?
Okay. Well, HR 1 is a House bill, and there's also a Senate bill that we were calling around trying to get co-sponsors for that Senate bill. But HR 1 would grant the rights for individuals to vote in federal elections. Anything that's dealing with the presidency and Senate and House bill elections, individuals with arrest and conviction records would be able to vote in those special elections. I'll say,
Okay.
and I think it's going before the committee next week. I know they wanted to get everything in by Wednesday and try to find co-sponsors for the Senate bill. And these are U.S. Federal bills that are going forth. And I think that if we could get something through the feds, the states will follow. The states will, they will find that it'll be very costly to separate elections and have different ballots and all this. And the states will probably follow suit, but that's yet to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was reading an article out of the New York Times that says that its title is the For the People Act.
Yep.
Designated as HR 1 in the House and S1 in the Senate. And it states that if passed and signed into law, it would establish automatic, same-day, and online voter registration, protect eligible voters from overly broad purges that remove them from the rolls, restore the Voting Rights Act with a formula for federal pre-clearance, which will require select cities and localities to submit new voting rules to the Justice Department for clearance. And finally, it says re-enfranchise the formerly incarcerated, strengthen mail-in voting systems, institute nationwide early voting, and increase criminal penalties for voter intimidation. And so, you know, there's federal legislation that's being proposed and sponsored to assist all of us. You know, and as Jerome said, you know, it's more likely than not that if it's done on a federal level, you know, maybe some states will adopt it, but it means that we continue to have to be advocates when it comes to unlocking the vote for previously incarcerated individuals.
Absolutely right. I'm glad you pulled that up. I wanted to, but I'm glad you were able to pull that up and really share that with us. And I know that they're still looking for co-signers, co-sponsors in the Senate. So let's call our senators. You know, I sent something out the other day asking individuals to call our senators, and also sent a template of a letter that could be sent. You know, we have to, and this is where our communications come in with, as organizations and service providers for a population, and that is sharing information, getting it out there.
Yeah, and then Laura, you also mentioned, putting some context to the historical aspects of this.
Mm.
And I would say to a lot of people, and I know a lot of people have already done this in the community, because there was a wave of celebrity. Even when she was here, Michelle Alexander wrote a book called The New Jim Crow.
Mhm.
So these systems have impacted, descendants of African slaves since we set foot in this country. Okay. It appeared that anytime there was any push towards social equality or human equality, again, those with the pen and the ideologies found ways to create barriers. Um, we today, have an example. The consequence of those things are stark and real to us today. Today is George Floyd. Early
That's
on,
right.
it was Emmett Till.
That's right.
And the many stories that we don't hear of both men, women, and children. And that's a painful thing for the history of the nation. I'm not going to call it my nation because I'm disenfranchised and I can't even vote.
Yeah.
But we have to understand that everybody's history, of course, is relevant. But there are some differences, and those differences are constantly before us. In terms of one of the things none of us have the ability to control, it's our outward appearance. You cannot not look at me and see someone who's Black or African American.
Mhm.
Um, and so, these systems, jailing people, fining people, having people become sharecroppers, indentured servitude, no education. So that's how we got here.
Yeah,
Disenfranchisement is not just in the criminal justice system; it's across the culture. Um,
that's
and
right.
and so we have to really, we really have to take a look at this in some very real ways. We've got now, even now. Let me give you an example of disenfranchisement that's relevant to today. COVID hit. Whose children in this community had unfettered access to the education or their continuing education when we
Mm.
shifted to a technological
Okay.
format?
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
lot of people, Latinx communities, Black communities, Hmong communities, others who don't have access. Okay. So access continues to be for a certain group of people. So they're going to excel and others are going to be left behind.
Mhm.
Disenfranchisement. When we have authority figures, okay, who don't listen to the will of the people and say, we're not going to fund Just Dane, or we're not going to support the United Way because they support Just Dane. That's disenfranchisement. Okay. If we're talking equity, where's the equitable playing field there? And I'm just one of those who believe it's incumbent upon us to, if we want to move forward, pay very close attention to where we are, how we got here. All right. We've been taught to look at disenfranchisement only through certain lenses. Let's expand that. Okay. Who's disenfranchised? Why? And ultimately, is there any real need for it? Is it out of fear?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
out of fear of losing what many of my white friends, as they define themselves, their
Privilege.
privilege and what that looks like? Do you have to give up something so that I could gain something, or do we work in concert? Okay, to heal whatever traumas we can. All right, and then figure again, how do we get beyond this? How do we
Yeah.
get beyond it?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's nothing new. Like I say, there's a way of tinkering with these different systems, and I know that you know, during Reconstruction, it was a very, very productive time for Black people in this country. We had more Black representatives and senators than ever before in the history. And so that's when the Southern strategy came along and created these barriers of disenfranchisement. And they looked at the 13th Amendment and said, wow, let's take this and let's run with it. And so in order to keep people enslaved after slavery, after Emancipation Proclamation, to keep people enslaved, they used the law, lottery laws, gambling laws, not having a job to incarcerate young to incarcerate Black people, period, because there were just as many women incarcerated during that time as it was men and young boys, and put them into servitude. And we fast forward, the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Act was passed where they had the ceremony in August of 1965. Right away, after signing that voting rights bill, first of all, he signed a bill that had to be renewed every so many years. The voting rights bill had to be renewed. So what kind of law is that? So that still left room, even after, you know, beating Jim Crow down and the Southern strategy and keeping people away from the ballot. Guessing how many jelly beans in a jar, taking a exam before to be able to vote, paying poll taxes. That's why I don't agree with fines, fees being something to block someone from voting. In Tennessee, my brother's down there. We were talking. If you lose that right permanently, but you go before the governor, and if you owe any child support, that blocks you from voting. That's what they're doing in Florida. Poll taxing. If you owe fines and fees, you can't vote. You know, simple as that. And then when Bloomberg, well, my brothers and sisters down there on the front line was raising money and paid almost $20 million in fines and fees to help people out. First of all, to get rid of it, not just, and to be able to vote. A lifetime ban. You had Black business, or not just Black, but felony people convicted of felons in Florida owning huge businesses, but could not vote. The mom and pop stores, they could not vote. They're running businesses. So I say that to say, even today, there was a plan, they call it the Mississippi Plan. And it was a strategy to deny African Americans the right to vote. And how they did it was redirecting the maps, redirecting the maps in their favor. And the feds came in. We got that going on right here in Wisconsin. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, because for those who this takes I'm no more intelligent or smarter than anyone who's sitting in this space right now. But what this takes is paying attention. The Milwaukee County is famous for its redlining and redistricting. The place in the city that I was born in, Michigan, okay, manufacturing, General Motors, okay, another city that, because of politics found itself being economically destabilized, okay, which again, disenfranchised whole entire communities of Black people and other poor people. So, we have that history here. We tend to, because we've been directed to believe that all these ills, were born in the South, lived in the South, and died in the South. Well, no, they came along with mass migrations of Black people from the South, who made racism and discrimination here in the North, even though it may have been, well, I'm not going to say less traumatic, but less in your face, a little more subtle in its applications. Okay, so we have to deal with all of these issues, and all of these issues we have to deal with because we've been given a language to discuss them that keeps us oppressed. The language itself oppresses us. The language itself keeps us confused. Okay, so and we can't go back and tell whoever created the language and the definition for the language that that's not what it is. Okay, because it's ingrained. It's how we define things, and we became very astute from going to defining things to defining people. Um, and so we would be, I think, proactive in acquiring what we say we want. We say we want racial healing and understanding and all of these other things, where it's going to take some intentionality and going to learn some lessons about who and how you see us as people, how you see our children in the schools. Okay, if you're comfortable enough to ask a sixth grader to talk to you about how a master should treat a slave, common sense should have told you that that was not the question to ask a sixth grader. Okay, go find out. Go talk to one another. Study the history of this nation in some very real ways. Okay, because it continues to bury us deeper and deeper into separation. People are masters at manipulating us. They are masters at.
Yeah.
Black people are one of the most studied people in this nation. We're talking about a pandemic and why people won't go get vaccinated. Well, we've been tested. My forefathers were injected with syphilis. Okay, there were and may still be clinics in Milwaukee killing the Black body. People have books about it. To make our daughters infertile, to lock our young men into cages for the rest of their lives, for committing the same crime, so to speak, that those who are supposed to be their peer in age and everything else, except for race, can walk away from. So those are some of the real things that we have to look at. All right. And it begins, question the policy, question the people. Where does our ability to hold people accountable? Okay. Again, and I'm not just here to promote Just Dane, but that's one of the reasons I'm there is because there's accountability. Okay. For what we do in this community. We're like physicians. Our first priority is to do no harm. Okay. To listen to you, to talk to you. Okay. And I think our agency has and continues to attempt to model that to other agencies, in particular in our hiring practices. Okay. And our ability to create this space so that this conversation could even occur in a real way. And I'm going to stop talking because I want to hear from the community. And I know Jerome does too, because we want to answer your questions to the best of our ability. And plus, I want you all to come back, particularly when I'm not here, because you see, I'm very loquacious, I'm very talkative, but this is what I'm passionate about. Okay, because I love my fellow human beings and I see how we're all being harmed, and I'm simply trying to share with you. Okay, and I know from past experience, some people, look and say, well, James, why were you so angry? I'm not angry. Okay, my anger is taking it out in my work, which is about compassion. That's where the anger is taken out at. Is being a so-called ex-offender, person who committed a crime, who's not afraid to talk to the sheriff, to go to the Capitol, to lobby for rights of my fellow citizens that I don't even have.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to leave that, Jerome, and I think Laura is ready to open it up for questions if there's questions in the chat. So I'm going to sit back here and.
Well, thank you so much for that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions, and I do want to invite anyone. You are all muted like through the Zoom, but I can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question with your voice. But Jerome, you touched on this a bit, but if you could talk a little more about the fight for legislation, and you mentioned that you're somewhat positive, but do you see a day anytime soon when the
Well,
voting
what
laws will change?
makes me positive actually is just having the conversations that we would not have, that I did not hear 10 years ago, about transforming not only the system here in Wisconsin, but even on the federal level 5 years ago, to be honest with you. And I'm seeing some things happening in the state that I dreamed of seeing some years ago. I just the other part of my dream is to see us, those who are directly impacted, coming together to work and strengthen one another to challenge these senses. Now is the time that we need to raise our voices and be heard and say, this enough is enough. This has to stop. We're paying taxes in this community. You know, I have a staff of directly impacted people, and most of them can't even vote. But they're paying taxes. We're taking those taxes out of there. And if there was something that, that I wanted to raise up. But the fact of the matter is, this is strategic. Everything James raised up a lot, and it's strategic. You know, I feel, and what I'm saying is this: we need the federal government to step in. They're the ones that stepped in and put billions and billions of dollars into a crime bill that incentivized states to build prisons, to pass laws like truth in sentencing. Wisconsin jumped on the bandwagon. That's why we're in the mess we're in. Because the fact is, if you build it, we're gonna feel it. We got, and that's what's happening. We built 9 prisons in Wisconsin between 1994, when the crime bill was introduced, and all those incentives were coming to states, and we bought one. That's 10 prisons in 10 years. 94 to 2004 was a prison booming time in this nation because of the incentives that the federal government said, we're going to put. They really messed. 3-strike laws were a bust everywhere, but states jumped on it. They passed those laws. We saw people going to prison for the rest of their lives for a loaf of bread, for a petty theft, because it was his 3rd strike. California was full of them. In Wisconsin, we're doing longer sentences. Oh, we're going to get rid of parole. That's the reason why they created new law. We're going to get rid of parole, and we're just going to use extended supervision. We're going to impose something called extended supervision on the back end of their sentence. And now it's commonplace to see someone who get 5 in and 10 out. 5 years in prison and 10 years of extended supervision. And I don't know if that's legal, or 10 years in and 10 years of extended supervision. That's not a rarity. That's something that's commonly happening in our state. That means most of my, I have 2 people on my staff who they'll be very old when they vote. For years now, I've been going to the polls with individuals who are 45, 50 years old, voting for the very first time in their life. What kind of message does that send to our children? There's a campaign, take your kid to the poll. What, we just gonna go to the poll and stand and watch people go in and vote? Because I can't go in and vote with you. Your mom can't go in and vote. But for many reasons, those are the cases. And so generations are being impacted by individuals not being able to participate in the process. When it's, when there's a debate or something, Most turn the TV to another channel. This doesn't pique my interest because what am I going to do? It doesn't pique my interest because I can't vote for another 10 years. It has to stop. Taxation without representation is wrong. That's what this very country was founded on. You know, the Brits taxing them and they had no say. So I say to the forefathers, how do you think we feel? You know, really. I'm sorry.
I hear you, man, because I mean, you're a passionate man too, and I think that's one of the sides of you that people don't rarely get to see. So it's good that they get the opportunity to see that passion, that fire, because that's what's needed. And we talk about, let's put this in the context of leadership, because it takes that leadership to be able to do that. Okay, we have many people representing many causes and different things, and I think in general, the community doesn't really understand what level of sacrifice that takes, the number of hours that it takes away from home and away from your children, and being in this space and being in that space, kind of like being the watchman and the watchwoman, overseeing, things to the degree that we can, so that it doesn't go all the way overboard. Okay, we've seen it shift. Like you, I've seen it shift over the years. Okay, and again, it gets back to education, because I was sitting in prison when the parole board was abolished, and the citizens who was paying for that process didn't have a clue. Okay, I see how that's being extended into the community. We want to see the prison numbers drop, because of prison numbers of people in prison drop, because the citizens are now complaining. Let's shift that to community corrections. Let's shift those dollars to electronic monitoring. And so now, we don't have to worry about people in prison anymore, because now we got whole communities of confinement.
In
Okay,
prison, in their homes,
and we're going to put them out there. We're going to put them out there. We're not trying to figure out how we can provide the treatment and other services that they need to return home to be healthy in the first place. We'll give them 30 days worth of medication, and when they act out, we'll send law enforcement. Okay, some who are attempting to be well trained in trauma informed care, but it's not really a part of their culture. Their culture is policing. It's locking people up. I've had many law enforcement officers, and I got friends in this community that I have honest conversations with, who, in their sphere of work, want to see things change. They understand it, but the culture in which they work, those who are the final determiners and decision makers, are making those decisions. So, we again have to be very cognizant of what it is we're doing here. If someone came to you, this is just something you can contemplate yourself. Someone comes to you and says, after you just experienced maybe even a minor trauma, how do you feel about it? That might take you in a whole lot of different ways or different areas. If that same person comes to you and say, well, what do you think about it? I believe and trust in your ability to come to a different answer while you're thinking, as opposed to the one where you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if you're feeling anger, you're feeling disappointment, you're feeling shut off, you're feeling closed in, you're feeling being put upon, you're feeling like you're forced to get to know another group of people who you've never even considered. Okay, that makes you very uneasy. Okay, we're not here to fight with you. We're here to come together with you and say, learn about this. This is not about trying to figure out, at least for me, whether or not you are racist and all that other stuff. I could care less. I want to talk to your human side. Okay, if you can assess your life and say my life is well enough, and that the next individual that I'm looking at deserves just as much, if not better than we can have a conversation. Okay. Now, let me say this, because we're a nonpartisan organization. We work with people across the aisles. We work with people who agree to disagree. We speak with people and work with people who are deep in their faith. We work with people who don't even have a belief. So we're the last ones to try to criticize or to put a label upon you that you have not put upon yourself. Okay. I would never do that. I never disrespect you in that way. So, again, I'm hoping that, and I know, Laura didn't know this, Jerome. She didn't know how we get when we are in these meetings or we're trying to reach out to our community. We start with a basic format, and sometimes we're struggling to try to keep that agenda what it's supposed to be. But we genuinely like to talk to people. We genuinely like to hear from people. And this is not a criticism, but I'm going to say to the people who are here, this space is created for your voice. Let us hear from you. I'm reminded sitting here of going to some conferences and speaking to college students and having to literally beg, don't y'all have any questions, please? Okay.
Well, on that note, I'll ask, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but Peggy, if you want to talk a little more about, because you put something in the chat saying that you're working on several non-legislative routes to getting this done. You want to speak on that?
Yeah, introduce yourself, Peggy.
Otherwise, Jerome can too. Hi, I'm Peggy West Schroeder. I am the statewide campaign coordinator for Expo, and I have the pleasure of working for Jerome Dillard. And so as in regards to Unlock the Vote, Jerome is, we tend to be very honest. And, one of the things that we're unfortunately painfully aware of is that we probably won't be able to get Unlock the Vote done legislatively with the legislature that we have in Wisconsin. So, we're still working with our legislators, and we're still trying to do some things. And so, the governor in Iowa, who is a Republican governor, just did an executive order and actually restored voting rights to people who, as they, Iowa had permanent disenfranchisement.
Lifetime ban.
And so, lifetime ban. And so in the last presidential election, the governor gave voting rights to people in Iowa. And so that's an option that Governor Evers has as well. We can do that. The other option that we have is, there's statewide referendums, which we have non-binding referendums, so that doesn't really help, but there's that. There's also litigation. And so we are taking a look, and we want to know what all our options are. The last option, which Jerome is adamantly opposed to, but has gotten this legislation passed in Florida and Louisiana, is making concessions. And so we say, we will pass, right, concessions. Yes, see that eye roll there? But that's one of the things where you say to legislators on the other side of the issue, what will it take to get this done? And like I said, that's something that we really are kind of adamantly opposed to. We don't want to have to make concessions, but again, if it restores voting rights to 20,000 people in the state of Wisconsin, we literally can change the landscape of politics in Wisconsin if we were to restore voting rights for people that are currently disenfranchised due to their felonies. And so it is probably scary for the legislature to imagine a Wisconsin where those who are directly impacted have a say in what's going on in the state. And we at Expo firmly believe that those closest to the solution or to the problem are closest to the solution. And who's better to vote for these elected officials than people who have lived inside of that system? You know, you go to jail and the county sheriff runs that system. You've been to the court system and the DA has run that system. So you've had firsthand experience with a lot of these people that are being elected. Then you go to live in a state facility, which is run by the state legislature and the governor. So we are uniquely qualified to vote. And we really believe that we could change the landscape of the state if they would allow us that opportunity.
Thank you so much. Is that, does Governor Evers have that information? Has that been presented to him, like an executive order thing, or?
It has.
It has. I think it, as we get closer to re-election time or something, I don't know what, he has to realize the narrow margin that he won the last election by. It was very, very narrow. How many? 20,000, 21,000 votes?
Had disenfranchised people been allowed to vote in the last two elections, both the presidential and the governor's election, we could have had a completely different outcome.
Yeah, but there's 5.6 million in this country who are disenfranchised. That's huge. That's huge. And if the feds, if we could get SB1 and HR1 passed on the federal level, I think it would change the landscape because states will line up to do it. And I feel that there needs to be investment from the feds in reversing some of the harms that the crime bill did. Three-strike law, I mean, and they militarized our law enforcement, our police departments, by giving them old military stuff. Battery rams, the traumas. There's so many kids that I know. I know one kid who was hurt seriously when they battery rammed the house in order to come in on a drug raid for someone who was a nickel dime bag dealer. Not making a ton of money. But anyway, police constantly coming in with guns out and yelling and just causing pandemonium. These kids just don't get over this. This impacts them. Yeah. And so we need to look at the whole picture. And they keep us, to keep us from the poll is for them to, or for those who are in power to keep that power. That's why redistricting, that's an old Mississippi move. They did that in Mississippi years ago, and now they're doing it all over the country, redistricting and cutting maps in their favor.
There's actually a question about that since we've just gone through a census. Since that's completed, the legislative districts will be withdrawn or redrawn.
Yeah, we're working on that in this state now.
Yeah. So how will that kind of impact this? And also, how do we get the people who do have the vote right now to kind of show up for those causes?
Well, you know what? And the answer to that question in the chat is yes. Okay. Because this is about empowering people. Mm-hmm. But we also know, given the trauma that exists in this community, that we have to create that safe space. Okay. Even if it's just, the education space, there has to be a safe space for them. We've had so many barriers, okay, and trust issues where, it's going to take a genuine and a concerted and a consistent educational message in these communities. We may find ourselves having to take some of the plays from the playbooks of the 60s and going into the communities, into the parking lots and gathering people. and spending time with them. Number one, answering their questions, to ensure them that they're being heard, as well as giving them the information to empower themselves and not just walking away, being there with them. Okay, to help them understand the value, the importance, and the outcomes. Access to healthcare, access to housing. We're still struggling to try to figure out in Dane County what's affordable housing.
Yeah.
If a person comes home and has to work 2 jobs at McDonald's, can that person come up with 3 times the rent to even get their name on a lease? Okay, so it's going to take building that power base. All right, it exists, but we're allowing a bunch of other issues and conversations to prevent us from getting to the real work. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, because if I can sit down with you all day, and again, if I could sit in meetings all day where people are going to talk about unconscious bias and all of these other things, okay, which none of us are responsible for, okay, and really look at those things that are keeping us emotionally chained, and begin to open up where we can freely again begin to say, okay, here's what this is. I don't agree. You don't agree. Let's use our collective knowledge. Our resources. Okay. And that's what it's going to take. Not to just unlock the vote for people in prison, but to really unlock the vote for people who go into the voting polls and booths, who go in with a sense of, I'm going to vote, for this person because this person supports my perceived hate or bias against this other group, and I don't even know why.
Hmm.
Okay, I do understand that I'm struggling too. Okay, and that my leader has told me is that it's because of those people that I struggle. Those new prisons that Jerome talked about that was built here in the state of Wisconsin when I was in the system were built in rural communities where the economy was dying. Okay, and
That's
the
right.
product to fill those communities came out of Milwaukee, Beloit, Racine, Madison, Wisconsin, communities of what we call and now people of color. But there was intention there. These were Black men, women, and children. Go look at the numbers. That's one thing that we have at our advantage. Okay, the documents and things are there. We can look at the data and the statistics and the numbers all day long. All right, we are fortunate because we get to work with the people. Okay, it's their stories, their narratives that hold that power that we need to unlock the vote. And to unlock, I say, not unlock the vote, let's unlock our collective humanity. How about that? Why don't we take that on as a cause? Let's unlock our collective humanity. Republican, Democrat, Muslim, Christian, our faiths. Let's unlock our collective humanity. That's the vote. That's the vote. I don't think I'll be around to see, but I'm really hoping that my grandchildren and your grandchildren and our greats, will sit back one day, and while they're talking about you and what you did or didn't do it with a sense of pride, because my parents and my grandparents, they fought so that we could have a better world. That's what we're struggling with right here. That's what we're struggling with nationally. Okay, that's what the world is struggling with right now. We're not in this by ourselves. We Americans, and y'all know the story of America. As long as we can, have our cake and eat it too, and possess wealth, and oppress other people because of their ideologies and beliefs, because they don't eat what we eat, we assume. Okay, this is where the white supremacy thing come out. That we assume that we should dictate the behavior of the whole world and can't even take care of our own. That's what this space is for. Okay, unlock the vote, unlock the humanity, disenfranchisement. Stop. Those of you who are doing it, stop trying to guilt my white friends and colleagues and family by talking about racism all the time. Give them something to help them grow too. Okay, stop doing that because you're doing it and you know you're doing it. All right, making money off of other people's harms. You're doing the same thing that others have done to us, and that's against the leadership. That's against the leadership. Okay,
Well,
it's against the leadership.
Just like last month's conversation, we've come to the end before the conversation is over. But I love ending with that concept, James, of unlocking a collective humanity. So I think that is a good place to end because it is 7:35. Jerome, do you want to say anything else before we?
No, we're already over time. I just want to thank Kim and Linda. I appreciate your observation that was in the chat about the redistricting. I know that, it's something that's going on here, and let's keep the hope. It's not over. It is not over. And so we just need to continue to educate our community around the different issues that are confronting our brothers and sisters who are connected to our criminal court systems, and continue to work together. We have to become unified. We have to work together and share information with one another and support one another.
Thank you, Jerome, so much for being here. And thank you, James, for being in conversation.
I got a final quote, one final quote, and it comes from the book entitled The Destruction of Black Civilization. And it goes like this. And the bridge was suspended between the two eternities, arched so high up there that the watchman could see from the east, north, south, and west what was to come. Okay, but every day he confronted a group of people who anxiously cried, and they continue to cry to this day because they didn't have the vision that the watchman had to look up in despair and to ask the question of him, watchman, can you tell us in this endless night just what the signs of promise are? So let us remember that there's promise in this too. There's struggle, but there's promise. Hold on to that. Hold on to that tonight with your family, with your children, with your neighbors, that the individual that you encounter, while you out and about tomorrow, even if they have that mask, let your eyes show that you're seeing them, okay, in all their humanity, as opposed to seeing them and letting them see the reflection in your eyes that says, I am looking at you in disdain. So everybody, please have a safe evening. Be well, and whatever your faith tradition, continue to be blessed, and don't be overwhelmed. We'll get through this together.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Thank you, Brother
Thank you very much for being here. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
All right.